this should be really easy. Like, this should be one of the easiest cases ever. We got a killing. We got a confession, full confession, not even being disputed, that confession. We've got airtight forensics. We've got facts not in dispute. We've got body cam of the killer over the victim, holding the knife, refusing to let it go until they tase her and beat her, and she finally drops the weapon. This is a slam dunk, right? I mean, why are you even making the show? Except that it's not a slam dunk. And it's not a slam dunk because of a loophole in the law, and it's not a slam dunk because of jazz hands by a defense attorney. It is potentially not a slam dunk because of weed, marijuana, THC, any name you want to give it. That's Bryn Spejcher. There she is in her trial. She took a few hits off the bong of her boyfriend. She was not a regular user. She'd only actually smoked marijuana about 4 or 5 times in the past, didn't really know much about it. And when she took those hits, she said she started hearing voices and went crazy. Thought she was dying. Thought the only way to come back from dying was if she killed her boyfriend, stabbed her dog, stabbed herself. I mean, it's really bizarre. The body cam of the police arriving, we can't show it to you, but I can tell you this. When the court had to see it, when the jurors had to see it, the reaction was, I mean, here, pick any adjective: overwhelming, horrendous, horrifying, disconcerting, filthy, disgusting, all of that. Some averted their eyes, others held their heads, others put their hands to their mouths. The body cam that the police saw when they got to the scene, Bryn crouching over Chad, stabbing herself in the face and the neck. They tased her twice. They hit her 9 times with a baton. Stop, stop, drop the weapon, they kept asking. She wouldn't. They broke her arm and her wrist before she finally dropped that weapon that she was stabbing herself with now. Chad was stabbed 109 times. Chad O'Melia died. Bryn was charged with second-degree murder, but 5 years later, they changed it. They changed it to involuntary manslaughter. And a renowned forensic psychiatrist said she suffered from a psychotic episode caused by cannabis. The relationship was good before that, so no motive there. She had no history of mental illness. What caused this? It's bizarre, isn't it? Let's bring in Matt Murphy, criminal defense attorney and former homicide prosecutor in California, and Dr. Ziv Cohen, a forensic psychiatrist. Okay, so first and foremost to the lawyer, because it seemed amazing to me that 5 years after they charged Bryn with second-degree murder, they reduced it to involuntary manslaughter, and the father of the victim said it felt like he was being ambushed. This is a surprise, I'm guessing, to you as well.
It is. We see methamphetamine-induced psychosis quite a bit in homicide cases. Marijuana is very rare, but the stronger it gets, I think we're going to see cases similar to this in the future. But this is a very odd legal move, and to drop it from a second-degree murder all the way down to an involuntary manslaughter. I would love to have been sitting in the staff room when they made that decision, because I frankly don't understand it.
And you wouldn't have gone along?
Personally, no, I wouldn't have gone along. We see cases like this all the time in methamphetamine cases, and involuntary manslaughter is a necessarily included offense. That means that if you present the murder, the jury has the option of actually sorting it out, and they're instructed, they have the option of coming back with a voluntary manslaughter or an involuntary manslaughter, depending on the unique circumstances of each case. So they would have had that option. To drop it all the way down and did not have it as a part of a plea, normally they would come and say, there's no plea.
No, 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 they're at trial, and there's a jury, and they have to decide.
I don't like this call. And I don't like what the defense is doing either. There's a lot I don't like about this case.
Doc, sure. I've been dying to talk to you because nobody thinks weed is dangerous. Weed can be very, very strong. The weed they found in the apartment afterwards was actually very, very weak. But they weren't able to test anything in the bong because it was gone. Is there something I'm missing here? Is there something about weed? Let's just say the dose beforehand was the first batch. The second batch was what they found that was weak. Maybe there was something strong in the dose. Tell me what possibly could make someone act this way.
Well, so it's really interesting. You know, we live in a time where marijuana has become more and more socially accepted. So, you know, 30, 40 years ago, it was illegal, stiff jail, prison sentences for marijuana, and now it's legal in many states and it's tolerated in others. But in fact, over that same period of time, we've seen a lot of medical evidence that marijuana is very strongly linked with psychosis. So heavy marijuana users have high rates of psychosis, high rates of conversion illnesses like schizophrenia. And there are more and more cases in the literature of people who develop an acute psychosis even from a little bit of marijuana use.
Are these people who have had some kind of mental illness in the past, or can it happen to anybody as healthy as an ox?
So the research shows that there are people who probably have underlying traits that no one's noticing that do make them vulnerable to have a psychotic episode from marijuana. But a lot of the time, it's not something that anyone would notice. The person could seem to their friends totally normal, but they have some underlying vulnerabilities. And so it could be that the marijuana was very strong, or that she was dabbing, because it sounds like the boyfriend was interested in marijuana and had different kinds. At least that's what she's reporting, and that he brought out something stronger. Dabbing marijuana is a very high concentration of marijuana. You take just a couple puffs, and there are case reports of people becoming acutely psychotic from dabbing.
Like what Matt describes with meth heads who kill in a frenzy. Could you see it being the same thing on acute THC or strong THC?
Yes and no. So I think with crystal meth, you know, it's a stimulant, so it really revs people up. So there's a psychosis where you lose touch with reality and you can have a delusion like, this person is Satan and I need to defend myself, but you're also really revved up, whereas cannabis is an hallucinogen, it usually calms you down. That's where I think that she does have a strong defense, which is that this is not a typical response to cannabis. So a person, when they use cannabis, is not going to expect to become psychotic or homicidal or raging.
So, Matt, the deal is that there's still a lot of learning that comes with THC. And like Ziv just said, THC is not our grandfather's THC or our THC when we were young. It's super strong, and I'm not assuming for a moment you would know what I'm talking about. But, you know, trying to convince a jury of the science that you've taken decades to learn and of the science that we're still kind of learning, is that just impossible?
No, I don't think it's impossible. What the defense, where they're going to have problems in this case, I think, is that they've got to convince the jury that this was involuntary. That's the problem. And I think that's a tougher row to hoe.
Because she went ahead and took the hit.
She voluntarily took it, right. And I think that the doctor's exactly right. Like, you might not anticipate that from marijuana, but at the same time, she still is aware that this is a human being. According to her own statement, like you said, she believed that in order to save herself, she had to kill him. And in her own statement, that means that she still recognizes the nature and quality of her acts. And she has some degree of responsibility, even in a psychotic episode, if she knows it's a human being, not to try to kill them. So it's an interesting area. The standard
you're talking about is the one we apply to insanity.
That's right.
Do we apply this same rule to these kinds of issues?
No, it's actually different. It's different. It's sort of the same way to a different way to skin the same cat, so to speak. But this is basically a
mind.
Right, the guilty mind. But the way it's been charged now with an involuntary manslaughter, it means that they've got to prove that she essentially was forced to take the marijuana.
Which she says her boyfriend said, oh, well, I'll get you something stronger. But I do find it odd because it's a little hard to force someone to inhale unless you plug their nose in.
Right, and saying I'm going to get something stronger, you can still voluntarily ingest something knowing that it's stronger. To say that he forced her into it or was insistent, that's what the defense is trying to do now, which kind of borders on victim blaming a little bit. I think that they've got nothing to lose. A lot of it.
A lot of it.
That's right.
That's what they're saying. Chad wanted me to do this extra strong stuff.
It's important to remember he has a family that loved him very much, and she has no background. She wasn't a criminal. She had no parts. Neither did he. By all accounts, he's a very nice young man.
That's what makes this so weird. That's what makes this so weird. I wanted to ask you about the toxicology business because they put out the report and it showed that they both had some THC in their system, nothing overwhelming. But I also know that in toxicology, it doesn't find everything in your system. You have to ask for certain tests to be done to actually find something in a tox report. Do you think it's possible that there was something laced in that cannabis that they didn't test for, but that blew her mind?
It's certainly possible. So one of the things with cannabis is that you have a lot of synthetic cannabinoids, and even flower marijuana can be laced with that. And those things are really hard to test for because there's new synthetic cannabinoids that are coming out almost every month. So it's certainly possible that there was something else there, but I just want to say that with the psychosis, there's two additional components we have to think about. One is that she was delusional. She thought she had to stab him to save her own life. So I think that does mitigate her responsibility. There wasn't a depraved heart here. She was actually under the influence of a delusion. And there's also a loss of control when you're psychotic. So you can't really control your behavior. You may have these thoughts, and normally you'd be able to control them, and now you can't. So I think in her state, the argument is that she really had a loss of control and a break with reality.
Again, it's going to be how good are these attorneys at explaining all of this to a jury, because the jury is just going to be so mixed up seeing this like otherwise perfect woman who has done the most horrendous murder. So
yeah, it's a lot easier legally to argue it as a murder and instruct on the lessers and let the chips fall as they may. I'm really surprised they made this move.
Well, me too. I can't wait to see what happens in this, and we'll have to get you both back. Thank you both.
Love to.
Appreciate it. Matt Murphy and Dr. Ziv Cohen, welcome. Nice to have you on the set.
Thanks so much.
Have you back.